Hello everybody, my name is Christian Swenson. I do videos here on YouTube about autism, autistic consciousness, and life on the spectrum. So today I wanted to tell you something that I've referenced in other videos, but I haven't talked about explicitly yet, and it's that I wrote a play. About 8 years ago, in July of 2013, I wrote and produced, I wrote and got produced a play that I wrote about autism. It was called The Box, and it was one of the most memorable and special experiences of my life to see these actors that had been cast and that were really professional portray what I had written and what I had intended on a stage in front of sold-out audiences for 3 nights. That was a really, really remarkable experience. And in fact, the play was recorded. I've never seen the recording, though. It exists, and I know how to get it. I'm just lazy and scared. So let me just really briefly, because people found it interesting then, I figured you'd find the plot at least interesting now. Maybe once I get the recording, I'll upload it to YouTube or something. But let me briefly summarize what happens in this play called The Box. So as you can tell, there is a box, an on-stage box with cutaway walls, and there's like a record player there, there's like a bench there, there's some books. It's kind of like this little mini apartment, very small, and there's a mirror, kind of not a real mirror, like a cutaway mirror into the box's walls. And there are 2 men in the box. There's one of them, he's just named the first man, and then the second one is named the second man. The first man was actually really interesting. The guy played it like my mannerisms, and it was kind of eerie, actually. But the first man is convinced that the inside of this box is the only reality. He is convinced that the outside does not exist, and he's convinced that the second man is only a figment of his imagination, a part of him, one of his appendages. That's how he puts it. But the second man is obsessed with getting out of the box. This second man is obsessed with discovering if and where he can find the real world. And so they kind of have a fight at the beginning. And the first man basically says, you know you're not going to reach an outside because there isn't one. And then the second man basically says, bite me, you know. And the second man, you know, this guy trying to get out, he's knocking on these imaginary walls. And basically what ends up happening is he's kind of desperate because he can't remember an outside either. He doesn't know. He doesn't remember anything. And neither does the first man. But the second man has an intuition. He has an intuition that there's more than this enclosed space with this abusive roommate. And they end up kind of reaching a standstill, so to speak. The second man can't find a way out. The first man doesn't want to be his friend. And so what ends up happening is the first man looks into the mirror. It's a very short play. The first man looks into the mirror, and a woman from the audience who'd been planted there comes down and approaches the first man through that mirror, which of course isn't there. And he's like, what? This isn't my reflection. This isn't me. Who is this? Who is this other? And she's like, I'm someone else. The second man is right. There is another world. And, and I come from there, and I want to teach you things. I want to teach you how to relate to the other. You know, it's not in those words. It's more colloquial. But what ends up happening is that this woman teaches the first man that he is not the only thing in the universe, that the box has more outside of it, and that he is not alone. He makes friends with the second man, and eventually what ends up happening is that the woman says, are you ready to leave? The woman says, there is more than you know in the world. And he says, well, how can I get out? There's no way out. And she says, take my hand. And she reaches her hand through the glass that was never there. And he's like, wait, this is impossible. This is not something that I have concepts for. This is not something I can conceive. The box is the only reality. What is this outside coming in? But he takes a leap of faith. He takes the hand, and he and the second man step through, and they discover that, to their delight, a whole audience of people is there waiting for them. A whole community of people that they didn't think existed was always there. And the first man picks up a playbill. And he looks at the playbill and he sees his name. Not the character, but the actor. And he realizes that there is a deeper identity to him that he had never seen. That he is more real than he had ever considered. And of course, he's upset a little bit that he's lost his box. He's lost the simplicity and the containment of his home. But, and this is the last line of the play, he looks around this small theater and says, oh, a bigger box. And then the play ends. It's a very emotional play to me, a story for me, because in many ways, without my realizing it, like I said, I wrote this 8 years ago, this play has foreshadowed and anticipated the structure of my life. There is a deep part of me that wants to be a solipsist. If you know what that means, it means to believe that I'm the only thing that exists. There's a deep part of me that wants to reject the existence of the other. But, you know, there is a line in a movie by Ingmar Bergman called Wild Strawberries. It says something like, and this is relevant in the age of Corona, says, they're talking to this guy in a dream sequence. It says, you have cut away any excess. You have cleaned away any dirt. You have quarantined yourself, made yourself completely safe. And you pay the price for any quarantine. Loneliness. To me, this play depicts in advance, it depicts the way I transcended and continue to work on transcending loneliness and the illusion of safety. It's to take the risk of taking the hand and stepping into a world where I am not the only thing that exists. You know, the beautiful thing about this is that it's like eerily, almost in a paranormal way, prophetic of my life. My wife, who I met on a dating site, is almost exactly like me. It's like if you played The Sims, it's like you flip the gender switch and shrink her a few feet. That's me. You know, it's like she's the female version of me. We both pace. She's likely autistic, but she hasn't been diagnosed. She has my facial features. She lots of really eerie coincidences, right? She played the same video games. She did all sorts of things. It's kind of like my stranger twin, if you've ever seen that on YouTube, only it's cross-gender this time when we ended up getting married. Marrying her felt like seeing myself in a mirror, where the self wasn't just a self, but it was other. But in a way, what that taught me, and what it's still teaching me, is that every other is also part of the self. And the self is not just the self, but it's other. There is a to and fro that happens. There's a linking, right? And that to me was beautiful, to see that a deeper part of me knew where I was headed and pointed the way. The deep self knows more than you do. And maybe I'll post a video about some of the techniques I've used to access the deeper parts of me at some point. But the play was also, you know, there are obvious philosophical references. You know, it's a very clear and deliberate reference to Plato's allegory of the cave. And, you know, in a way, autism is the allegory of the cave. It's seeing a world that where other people see three-dimensionally, we tend to see only the two-dimensional shadows of what other people see. But on the other hand, maybe everyone else is in a two-dimensional shadow and we see three-dimensionally. I could see it going either way because we see different parts of the world. It's kind of a Gnostic play, if you know anything about Gnosticism, the idea that, kind of like the Matrix, we're locked in an illusion. But here, the illusion we're locked in is the illusion of a self that has no outside. Every inside has an outside. Of course it does. And I think to realize that the inside and the outside go together is one of the most important lessons I've learned. I feel like oftentimes as autistic people we feel that we would rather have an inside and not have an outside, but of course that isn't the case. We defend against the outside like that first man did, even while another part of us desperately longs for it. You know, that's what the two men are, you know? There's the part of you that defends against the world and is safe, and there's the part of you that longs for the world outside the defense and is lonely. Safety and loneliness go together. Vulnerability and connection go together. There is a way in which, by opening ourselves up to vulnerability, to woundedness, something new, something other can flow in through the wound. And so, I guess that's it. Like I said earlier, I think I'm going to, at some point, see if I can't get a recording of this and maybe post it on YouTube. I was thinking, should I sell it on Amazon and you know, get some money out of this? Well, if eventually, once I get 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time, I'll be getting money from it here. So why not? So like, subscribe. Sorry I didn't post last Saturday. I figured last post was controversial enough that it counted for 2. So I'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.